Are the Doors primed to make another huge upset? Joey Dwyer from Vandy Sports joins us.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Man, this atmosphere, Joey, is going to be electric this weekend. As I mentioned, Joey Dwyer is sitting right there next to me from VandySports.com. He joins the show. Joey, appreciate the hell out of you, man, for hanging out. But I want to talk about this first, man. Langston, Patterson, Miles Capers, they're back from injury, I believe, right? I think they're still on track. How big of an impact does this have on this game?
Yeah, thanks for having me, by the way. I appreciate it. The consistency with which you cover the team is pretty impressive, and trying to get there myself, and I also wish I had as cool of a backdrop. I've just got the blank wall for now. But I think Miles Capers and Langston Patterson, more than anything, give Vanderbilt a lot of confidence. I think you've seen them at times falter in the run game, and I think having Langston Patterson back is going to be a big deal there. Texas obviously has some really good tight end play. I think Langston Patterson will help with, and then you can never have enough pass rushers, as the old adage goes, and I think Miles Capers is really going to help them in that aspect. I thought he was playing some of his best football before he got hurt. Thank goodness that injury wasn't as bad as it looked in Kentucky. I think the whole press box kind of just went silent there for a couple of minutes. I think probably everybody did, but I think having them both back is such a huge thing. They might be missing Colby Taylor, who went on the injury report today with what Clark Lee said was his back flaring up, so that'll be an interesting thing. But Texas also has some guys out. Isaiah Bond has been downgraded to doubtful, so there's a lot of injury stuff, and I think a lot of it has gone Vanderbilt's way throughout the early part of the week and even the mid part of the week to this point. So a lot of good for Vanderbilt at this point in the injury report, and we'll see if they can capitalize on it.
Well, is Colby Taylor being a late addition to the injury report? Who is it? Martell Height, and who else steps in there in Colby's absence?
Well, I think Tyson Russell is going to have to take a big step on Saturday. At least if Colby Taylor is limited, if he's not playing at all, I think it's a huge deal. And Tyson Russell is going to be really tested throughout the day. You've seen Jalen Lackey out there a little bit more, a guy who had a huge fall camp. And I couldn't tell you exactly how well he's played. It's kind of hard to quantify that with me doing so many other things. But he had a really good camp, and I think they really like his ability. They like at least the intensity that he showed when he's out there. So those are the guys I really look at as guys who have to step up. And I think it might be a time for Jalen Lackey to grow up pretty quickly against a really explosive offense with a lot of speed. And I think bigger than all, Vanderbilt just can't let its corners get into one-on-ones in space. Clark Lee's talked about that all week. Texas is far too dangerous on the perimeter to have even Martell Height one-on-one with the guy on the perimeter and expect him to make the tackle in space every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they got to avoid that. They've got to be able to recognize situations, and the challenge, Joey, is going to be when Texas decides they start to kind of get in a rhythm. They go fast. And they get going. Next thing you know, they hit you with a 50-something yard bomb or some sort of explosive play that gets them across the goal line. But limiting that, looking at the keys to the game, we're gonna talk about controlling the tempo, controlling the game, win third down, keep Ewers and Manning off rhythm, depending on who Sark wants to throw in there, and capitalize on those scoring opportunities. Let's talk about tempo, though, and controlling the game, because that's going to be one of the defensive philosophies here for Clark Lee. It's going to be especially true. Most of the time, it's Pavia and the offense. The focus is on them controlling tempo and let everybody else kind of fall in line. I think this week it's going to fall on the defense to control the tempo, because the more they can, and I love this Clark Lee quote right here. The more you get them to snap the ball, the better chance they have of getting out of rhythm, the better chance they have of making mistakes and giving Vandy chances to keep this thing tight. So, man, I'm excited about that. How are they going to try to limit what are they going to do defensively to limit the explosive plays, to get them off balance and to make them snap it 10 or more times?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the same stuff they've been doing all year, a lot of which is predicated on having multiple guys running towards the ball and not leaving guys out on islands. And they've left guys out on islands before. Colby Taylor against Georgia State comes to mind. I think the Virginia Tech game was a huge busting coverage that kind of went under the radar because of the magnitude of that win. I don't think they've been incredibly sharp in their back end for points of the year, and I think that's maybe a concern going into this game because Texas is certainly going to make them pay. But I think with the ball control and keeping Texas's offense off the field and making them snap it more and more, I think the thing I look at is the Vanderbilt offense and kind of how that plays into it, because I think that's probably even a bigger thing than getting Texas's offense off the field is keeping Vanderbilt's on. And to this point of the season, they've done that just about better than anybody. They're number one in the league in third down conversion rate. They're punching it in just about every time they go in the red zone. I think 20 out of 28 times they've been able to score a touchdown when they're in the red zone. They've only turned it over twice on the season, and once they've been intercepted. So those are the stats that stood out to me throughout the week, and things like that are going to have to continue if they're going to find a way to keep the Texas offense off the field. Because, I mean, it's kind of like the Alabama offense, right, where Alabama was on the field for less than half the time Vanderbilt was and still scored 35 points. I don't think Vanderbilt's defense is going to be able to limit them as much. It's just, can they keep Texas offense off the field and give them less opportunities to make plays? And I almost think that's the more modern dynamic of college football. It's just a lot of games are shootouts, and if it's not a shootout, it's a game of keep away, because I think the offense is just so far ahead of defense in college football at this point. And I think this discussion is kind of a microcosm of that in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where does Vandy's offense hurt Texas the most?
I think it's just with what they've always done throughout the year. It's just that they know who they are. They know what identity they want to play with, and they're going to consistently play well to that. And I don't really have much concern about them, at least intending to do that. I don't think they're going to get away from what they've done. I do think Texas is probably the best defense that they've played throughout the year, though, and that can make it a little more difficult, especially if A.J. Newberry and Cedric Alexander are guys who are a little banged up throughout the week. I expect both to play. They're both probable on the injury report, but, man, they're going to have to establish the ground game a little bit. I'm a little concerned about whether they can do that. But, I mean, the Vanderbilt offense is what it is. It's no fluke. It's no just fluky play call by Tim Beck or design that teams just haven't picked up on yet. I mean, this is a team that knows who they are. They know what they want to accomplish. And, man, they've consistently done it, Corey.
Dude, you're telling me, man, like each week I'm like, okay, this is, and people are predicting each week, hey, the Cinderella slippers are going to fall off now. Vandy's going to regress back to the mean. And it still has not happened. They just keep collecting the wins. They're already sitting at 5, which I wasn't sure where I didn't have them predicted to be at 5 at this point. I thought they were going to get their 5th and 6th wins on down the road. I thought this Ball State was going to be 4, and then 5 and 6 were going to be against like Auburn and South Carolina. That's kind of where I predicted it preseason. But
you had a better prediction than I did at that point.
Yeah, I was just going out on a limb. I was like, man, I'm seeing all this overhaul stuff, and I'm seeing Coach Steiner coming in, Jerry Kill, Tim Beck, Diego Pavia. I watched him when he signed. I watched a bunch of his stuff from New Mexico State, and I was like, this dude, I don't know if people realize, but this guy's a baller. And he's lived up to that. And so everything has kind of fell into place for Clark Lee. He midseason coach of the year. Diego Pavia is on a Manning Award watch list. How is this? So switching from this game to like the culture, with Vanderbilt fans and the community and the athletic department and NIL, how has all this affected that? In sense of NIL and sense of fan engagement, season tickets, all of that. How has that affected that?
I mean, naturally, I think it just has a huge effect. Clark talked today about how it's a lot easier to recruit nowadays than it was maybe even a couple months ago, because you're selling not only a vision, but results to back up the vision. Guys love the idea of coming to play in Nashville. They love the top 15 school thing that Clark mentions all the time. They love just seeing Vanderbilt in the building, and Clark mentioned how they treat each other, things along those lines. Now they've got some wins to back it up, and I think that goes for everything. It doesn't just go for recruits. It goes for fans. It goes for NIL. People just wanted a reason to buy into Vanderbilt football, and I think you've seen that kind of come to fruition throughout the last couple of months. At Vandy Sports, our football stuff has always done better than our other sports stuff, and football has been their least successful sport by dang near a mile in the last couple of years. So
yeah, absolutely.
People just wanted a reason to be involved with this thing, and they wanted a reason to be proud of it. And I think they're really proud of it right now. And I think there's a lot to like about this program. They're underdogs, but they're also a really lovable team. I mean, you look at the underdog stories of Diego Pavia, you look at Nick Rinaldi, who hadn't played football until a few years ago. You look at Prince Colley, who's come back from an injury.
Oh, yeah.
Just there's so many stories like that all around the roster. There's Eli Stowers and his faith and how that's got him through a position change, things along those lines. There's just so many cool stories and so many reasons to really like this team, even if you're looking at it kind of from an unbiased perspective like myself.
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, plenty of stories. And you guys at Vandy Sportsman, you guys have done a hell of a job of covering all of that and getting all those stories out there. I enjoy reading all that stuff, and I enjoy interacting with y'all's community over there at Vandy Sports. And I'm a Rivals guy myself, so I was on the national team for 12 years. So
yeah, that's awesome. I looked into that a little bit. I've researched you back in the day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was a video guy, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun. But hey, we're gonna continue on, man. We're gonna talk some more game planning, some more culture stuff, some more Vandy right after this. So stay tuned. Joey's gonna hang out. All right, talking about Prize Picks. That's right. What is Prize Picks? It's the best place to get real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. So here's the thing. All right, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. How do you like those odds, Joey?
Pretty freaking good.
Yeah, you can't beat that, man. It's the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states: California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas, including where you can't get things on FanDuel and DraftKings and stuff. It's the best place to get real money action. And 10 million users have are currently there. So make sure you join the 10 million. They put its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. So when you do win your 100 times your bet with 4 correct picks, you know you're going to be safe with your withdrawal. So sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more valuable for your lineup. So Prize Picks, get on the train. PrizePicks.com. Let's get it. All right, we are back. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are here with you. Joey Dwyer from VandySports.com is continuing to hang out with us. Joey, let's continue on, man. This game is huge in magnitude. It could be a second top 5 upset of the season, and probably the first time. Well, actually, definitely the first time ever that Vandy could upset 2 top 5 teams in their entire history. So we talked about controlling the tempo, win on third down, and this goes both ways, offensively and defensively. We talked about, we alluded to it a little bit, but being able to stay on the field on third downs offensively, which is something that we are already great at, number 1 in the league and probably somewhere near the top in the country as well as far as third down conversion rates, and then getting off the field on third down on defense. So you get them backed up, you get them in some situations. Getting them off the field is also important to get the ball back into Diego Pavia's hands. So what is the key? So we know the key offensively, Vandy just needs to do their thing, right? Defensively, Texas shows that they're an explosive offense. They do a lot of good things. They do a lot of dynamic things. But what did you notice from watching a little bit of Texas, and what have you noticed from what they've done from an offensive point of view to be able to attack them on third down and be able to win fairly consistently on third down defensively?
Yeah, the main thing I noticed is that you're just not going to be able to shut them down by any means. I think they have so much speed, and they really do a good job at getting their guys in space quickly. And I think Clark brought up the term quick space. Like, they're getting a guy a ball 3 yards off the line as soon as they snap it, and you can't do anything about it but try to make the tackle. So I think they're going to have to get to the ball carrier, and they're going to have to be sound fundamentally in what they're doing defensively. I kind of sound like Clark Lee when I talk about this stuff. I think I've heard so many Clark Lee pressers that it just rubs off on me at some point. But you're right. I think he's right, though. I think Texas is certainly more talented offensively. I think in just about every position group than Vanderbilt is defensively. But I also think Vanderbilt can kind of negate that a little bit with gang tackling, things along those lines. And I think they've got to put some pressure on whoever the quarterback is. I would think Ewers is going to start and probably stay in the game. But whoever's in the game, I think Vanderbilt's got to make it a challenge for. And I think they've done a much better job throughout the year than I thought they would in that aspect. Looking at fall camp, I was like, man, I just don't know that they're going to be able to get any pressure on the quarterbacks. They don't really have a guy there, but they've had a lot of guys step up and become solid pass rushers. Linus Sung comes to mind. Miles Capers comes to mind, and he'll be back. So I think you got to put some pressure on the quarterback here. But more than anything, you've got to make tackles in space. You got to be fundamentally sound. And I think you got to get Texas in longer third down situations rather than a 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. I feel like they're going to convert that pretty often. I think it's got to be more like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 consistently for Vanderbilt to have a hope of getting off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just about to get there, man. Yeah. You got to keep them off schedule. So get them, in order to win 3rd down, you have to win 1st down, and essentially you have to win 2nd down as well. Maybe get them into some uncharacteristic penalties, things like that, and take advantage of it when you do get them in that situation. So yeah, you're right. They're going to stay ahead of the sticks probably most of the time. They're an efficient offense. They do their thing. But when you do get them in a penalty or in a sack situation or in a tackle for loss or whatever, and you do find yourself in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, you have to, it is absolutely imperative that you capitalize on those situations to get off the field, especially. That way you give yourself some confidence so that maybe later on in the game, you get a 3rd and 3. Next thing you know, you're playing press coverage and they can't, you create a tight window and maybe you can get them into a turnover or something to where Texas maybe is not in as good of rhythm or doesn't have as much confidence or whatever the case is. Getting them in those situations and capitalizing early, I think will help you down the road in those shorter situations where you might actually win some of those.
It's just building in margin for error with yourself and for yourself. And I think that's really what Clark has preached for years is just, you've got to give yourself a chance to win games against more talented teams. And I think they probably know Texas is more talented. I'm sure guys like Stephen Hubbard and Brandon Fontenette would not admit that to you. But I think a lot of guys on the roster know that. But that doesn't mean they can't beat them. That Alabama was more talented than they are, but they went and beat Alabama. I'm sure the same thing applies to Kentucky. So I think you've just got to build in margin for error with yourself. And that's on both sides of the ball, but especially defensively against an offense like that. You've got to make it to where if you miss a tackle, the guy's not gone, to where you got a guy running and helping you make that tackle. That's just a big resounding theme for me this weekend. You got to build in some wiggle room for yourself if you make a mistake, because it's going to come at some point.
Yeah, they're gonna strike you. I mean, that's just what they do. Offensively, winning on 3rd down means you're staying on schedule, meaning you are attacking the run game. But to be able to get into that situation to where you're, if you're in 3rd down, you're in third and manageable, which is 3rd and 5 and less. The passing game is something that still is a little bit of a mystery. Fortunately, it hasn't been as much of a requirement as it normally would be for most offenses. But how do they get the passing game going? How does Quincy Skinner become more consistent? Same with Junior Sherrill. The freshmen, how do we get them involved? Like, there's got to be, I think down the stretch, there's got to be a little bit more presence of a more consistent and more efficient passing game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that's a harder question than is applicable to my pay grade. I think Tim Beck's going to have to figure out a way, because it's difficult for me to do. I think the SEC corners are better than Vanderbilt's receivers, but Quincy Skinner has made some plays recently. He's got some first downs. I think a big key for their passing game, not only getting Eli Stowers involved, because that's happened and that's been a big key for things. I think they had to get Cole Spence involved a little more as well. I think that's a guy who had a tremendous fall camp. He was one of the better players on the field every day, even with some so-so quarterback play throughout the fall, which even Diego Pavia had at times, which I thought was interesting that he just flipped the switch immediately once the season started. But Spence, I think, could be a real weapon for them down the stretch here. And I think maybe getting some guys in space could be a key too, because I don't think Junior Sherrill is going to be a guy who is consistently burning corners with the whole route tree. I think it's a guy who's got to get it in space, maybe make a guy miss once or twice. Quincy Skinner, I think, has a chance to really take a step forward, but it's just about whether they can get time for Pavia to be able to do that. And I do look at tight end play as somewhere where you're not only looking at Eli Stowers as somebody who could be a weapon down the stretch, but Cole Spence as well. 'Cause he had a much better game, but against Ball State as well. He's been a huge addition with his blocking, but I think his pass catching is probably his best asset still.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Cole Spence he can be a weapon if they want to utilize him. He's a massive target and somebody that can command attention in the middle of the field. And when you have a guy like that, and you have a guy that's paired with him like that with Eli Stowers, so you can go a lot of 12 personnel, you can do some things creatively with formations that create horizontal space, and you can get guys in there. And I think Vandy's key, honestly, and I would like to see more of it, and I see flashes of it, but I would like to see them more just catch and throw and get out there and run some quick game and, except 4, 5, 6 yards on a first or second down, throwing a slant or throwing a hitch and saying, okay, we're going to set up and now we're going to be in 2nd and 6. I like those odds. I like Diego Pavia running the option from 2nd and 6, then 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 10 or whatever the case may be. But I think quick game is going to be better because I think Quincy's enough of a dog to win some contested catches. We just got to get him in some opportunities where he's off the line quick or he's taking advantage of he's eating up cushion if guys are going to play off or whatever the case may be. However they're going to line to the option, we've got to be able to get receivers in those holes as well to create some more dynamic looks. And I think Tim Beck is going to have some things like that cooking up. I think they're trying to figure out who's going to be involved with that. But what do you see out of these freshmen, though? How can they get involved? Like Joseph McVay, he's pretty electric. He can stretch it vertical, and I think Tristan Brown can do the same. I think getting them involved vertically and having them really attack some space would be good too. I think that would add some pop to this receiver core.
Yeah, I think Joseph McVay has more in terms of downfield, I guess, potential than most people think. I think dang near every day throughout fall camp, he would make a 40 or 50-yard catch, and that would maybe be his only catch throughout the day, which is kind of fitting that, his only college reception came in that Missouri game, and it was a 57-yard touchdown. Yeah, I think that's the path for him, is designing packages to where he can put the burners on and try to make a play downfield. Tristan Brown, I think, is a guy who they could maybe use more in the second half. I think he's played in 4 games, so they're going to have a redshirt decision with him, but I think they're trying to go to a bowl game, and they're probably not going to do that. I think he's a guy that you can get on the field with his speed, and I think he's a better route runner than people give him credit for as well. I think that's a guy who you could really see step up down the stretch, maybe not in the way Junior Sherrill did last year, but I think it's almost sort of the same mold to where he's a downfield threat, and maybe he can do some things and make some guys miss in the short yardage game as well. Those are the 2 freshmen that I really pinpoint at receiver. I think Whit Edwards is still a ways away, and I also think he's hurt. And then Bosky Barrett, I think, is a little bit of ways as well, and he's probably going to redshirt. But McVay and Brown, I think, are 2 guys who are really going to be playmakers for them if they have the opportunity to. But it's just hard when you don't play a whole lot of receivers, right? You're only playing 1 or 2 a play most of the time, and you've also got a lot of older guys ahead of them. But I think there certainly is a place for Tristan Brown, and there might be a place for Joseph McVay as well.
I'd love to see them get involved here, but let's make some predictions next. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Joey, do you play FanDuel?
I do not.
Well, you're missing out. NFL fans, college football fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. So when you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Me personally, I like playing the player props where you can bet on receptions or receiving yards or anytime touchdowns. Those are the more fun bets to me than betting with spreads and over and unders and stuff like that. I get to root for players. It makes it a lot more enjoyable to watch some of these dreadful matchups in the NFL. So you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. All right, we are back, wrapping up the show here with Joey Dwyer from VandySports.com. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. If you need a second listen when you're done here, check out Locked On SEC. We did SEC Squad. That's always a lot of fun. I'm getting more involved with that, so you don't want to miss that either. It's already on the channel if you want to check it out. Prediction-wise, how do you see this game shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I think Texas is a better team and they're 20-point favorites, obviously, but you also don't want to bet against Vandy right now with just kind of the mental makeup they have and the things that they've done and the attention to detail that they've had. I would obviously lean a Texas win. I think it's hard to see a path to them beating that team, even more so than them beating Alabama. But, man, a lot of people have made it out to be the Cinderella shoe is going to snap at some point. But I think even if Texas wins this game by close to the spread, there's still a good team in there with Vanderbilt. And I don't think if Texas wins by 15 or 20 that's going to end the run for Vanderbilt. I think they can still go and win at Auburn the next weekend. I think Texas is really, really good. And I'm honestly surprised that they dropped that game to Georgia. I just think they're a team that is a true national title contender. And if Vanderbilt wants to stay alive, it's got to go win that game. But right now I'd have a hard time betting against Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing. But I went on with a crossover with Jonathan Davis of Locked On Longhorns, and I just said, you know what? Vandy's going to win. It's going to be upset city. So I'm going to stick with that. But I think in a realistic scenario, if they can keep it tight, if they can keep it within, not significantly, but like well under the spread, not like right at the spread, but if they can keep it close, I think that still sends as much of a statement. Well, not as much of a statement, but it still sends a statement is the next best thing to winning. Obviously that sends a huge message, but like a 10-point game would be a statement enough. So I see it playing out to where it's going to be a battle early on. I think Texas is going to struggle with the option attack. Everybody has so far, and Tim Beck does such a good job of presenting multiple looks and keeping the scheme simple and just presenting you with formations, motions, shifts, all kind of things pre-snap that kind of throws you off and throws you off your keys, that I think Texas will struggle and Vandy will be able to keep it tight. Now, I think Texas is explosive enough to where they have a chance to really kind of push this game out a little bit. But to me, I think this Vandy team, if they're close late, they can jump out there and get it. And I think if they are, and I'm going to say that they are, I think they go out and get it because I just think they're hungry. They want it. They're one game away from bowl eligibility, which I think is the first hurdle. If they can just get to a bowl game, I think that will be considered the first level of success, and then they can continue on with their journey of how they want to progress through the season. So I'm saying a Vandy win. Worst case scenario, they cover. So I'm taking Vandy plus 18.5 no matter what. So yeah. Let's look at some other games. You want to pick a couple some other games while we're here?
Yeah, I don't know how good my picks will be, but I'll go for it.
Let's do it. All right. So here's a game that's kind of relevant to Vandy. I think Vandy fans will be kind of looking at this as this is a future opponent a few weeks down the road. But LSU at Texas A&M. This is an interesting one. It's a very close spread, 2.5 points favored to the home team, Texas A&M. How do you see that game shaking out?
I think it's hard to bet against LSU right now. It's really hard to go into Kyle Field and win, especially with that defense. But I just have a hard time betting against LSU at this point. If they lose this game, I think that puts a real wrench in their playoff hopes, although they can still get there. I'd bet on the better team right now, which I think is LSU, despite the home field advantage.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Nussmeier has shown me enough. Early on, I was like, never again will I pick LSU, but they've shown me some things. Defensively, they've shored some things up. They figured some things out, and they're a little bit tougher. Offensively, they can score. They can light it up. They're electric, and I think Nussmeier has it going on right there. So I'm taking LSU on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to guess A.J. Swan doesn't get into that game, but if he does,
yeah, probably not.
I might change my pick a little bit. Although he could be a good quarterback elsewhere.
He could be. He really could be.
Not in that game.
No, definitely not in that game. But I think he could be a good quarterback elsewhere. So South Carolina is off this week, but Auburn at Kentucky. This is probably the pillow fight of all pillow fights of the century. Auburn is 2.5 point underdogs at the Grocery Bag, Kroger Field. How do you see that one playing out?
Yeah, that one's not going to be pretty. I would go with Kentucky just because of the home field thing and the defense I kind of believe in. I mean, it even in the loss to Vanderbilt showed up to be a fine defense. I would go with them, and it's mostly just because I don't believe in Auburn at this point. Not that I overly believe in Kentucky, but I just think Kentucky's a better team. Maybe not by as much as you would have thought going into the year.
Right. I think they're going to turn over Peyton Thorne at least 3 or 4 times. I think I think Kentucky has a chance to roll this one. I'm considering Auburn one of the bottom 2 teams in the conference, which is good for Vandy because I think that's a win they can definitely get. And Avia owns Hugh Freeze apparently, so I like that. I like my odds there. So Joey, VandySports.com, you guys do a phenomenal job, man. What's going on over there at the website? What do people need to, if they're not subscribed already, why should they come in and subscribe?
Yeah, I think it's some of the most consistent Vanderbilt coverage from a writing standpoint. And when I think you add the video in and what we're doing on almost a daily basis there, I think it's the best Vanderbilt coverage out there. No offense, but we're trying our best. I think we've got a great team with me, Billy, and Chris, and then we're really going to hit it hard for basketball. We've got me and Brandon Bigsby and Billy and Chris all doing men's basketball, and then Brendan and Elena Morris doing women's basketball. So we've got a lot going there. And there's a lot on the horizon for Vandy Sports that I'm actually not able to get into at the moment, but we'll see in a couple months, and I think that'll be an exciting time for us. So looking forward to that. And I love where we're at right now, though, and with our coverage. And I just think we're going to continue to keep building, as are you.
Absolutely, man. Well, like I told you before, I'm a Rivals guy, so we're all family here, so it's all good, man. Sure. This is we can build off one another, and I look at it that way. And this is they come to you guys for some great content, and they come to me to see me react to what you guys put out there. That's kind of how I roll. So, and then if you want a backdrop, so you got to get some knickknacks. So
I do.
Just a collection of knickknacks from over the years, like a Macho Man, like 10 poster. I don't know where I got that Nashville painting, and then just things I've acquired over the years. Yeah,
I mean, I'm in a college apartment, so it's pretty barren right now. But I've got a Kyle Hendricks signed picture from the World Series a few years back, and a Cole Kmet signed Bears picture, and that's about all we've gotten here. So we're gonna have to. Yeah. Hopefully next time I'm on, I'll be able to transform it a little bit.
Oh, you'll get there, man. Just all that junk you acquire from different places, just hang on to it, and next thing you know, it just finds its way on a bookshelf behind you.
It's a great idea.
So anyway, well, Joey, it was great talking to you. This is certainly not going to be the last time that we hang out on the show, especially during basketball season. I'm looking forward to it. Mark Byington has done a phenomenal job so far building. I've been reading y'all's stuff on him and the practices and how the team's looking. So I'm excited about basketball. I've never been excited about basketball in any capacity because I've just been down on the sport in general. But seeing what Vanderbilt's doing with Mark Byington and seeing what the league is doing as far as basketball goes, I think it's rejuvenating me a little bit. And so we'll reading you guys' content is firing me up a little bit. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Basketball season and the baseball season, it's always an adventure with Vanderbilt baseball. So we love it. But Joey, thanks for joining us, man. And we're gonna get out of here and have a great weekend. We'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Behave yourselves. Have a great weekend. Anchor down.